When I unlocked my front door that Thanksgiving afternoon, the house was silent, too silent for a holiday. The table was set for one. A suitcase sat by the fireplace. But it wasn't mine. My son, his wife, and their daughter were gone off to the Bahamas, they said, and they'd left a stranger to keep me company. My name is Evelyn Pierce. I'm 70 years old. And this year, my family decided I needed supervision. But what they didn't know was I'd already started watching them first. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't come with shouting, it comes with polite emails, neatly folded napkins, and a stranger's suitcase by your fireplace. I was never a woman who needed much noise around her. I loved the quiet hum of morning, the coffee pot bubbling, the faint creak of wood beneath my slippers, the first sunlight cutting through lace curtains. That was how David, my husband, used to describe me. You live like a whisper, he'd said, brushing flour from my cheek during our first Thanksgiving together. But even a whisper can change the whole room. Back then, our house was full of small music. The sound of a piano scale, the squeal of our son's sneakers on the wooden floor, the ticking metronome that annoyed everyone except me. Lucas was 10 when I taught him Bach's Prelude in C. His fingers were impatient, always wanting to finish before the measure ended. He didn't understand yet that beauty came from restraint. One afternoon, I heard the front door close early. The piano bench was empty. His sheet music had been crumpled and stuffed into the trash. Later that night, I found out he'd dropped piano for soccer. I smiled, said, "If that's what you want," and quietly folded the sheet back out. Smoothed every crease. I didn't know it then. But that small moment, his refusal to play, my decision not to insist, would define us for decades. Lucas grew up chasing wins, not melodies. Years passed like pages turning too fast. David and I grew older together, still keeping our small traditions, Thanksgiving dinners with too many pies, Friday night, Scrabble, the sound of his old jazz records spinning through the house, until the autumn when he began forgetting the words to those songs. It started subtly. He'd call a trumpet a violin. He'd ask if I'd paid the electric bill twice in the same day. Then came the night I found him standing in the hallway at 2 a.m., staring at the front door as if waiting for someone. "I was just making sure it's locked," he said, smiling. But his eyes were lost somewhere I couldn't follow. When he died the following year, I thought the silence would kill me. But his eyes were lost somewhere I couldn't follow. But heavy. The kind that swells in an empty house, not peaceful, like a held breath that never lets go. Of course, arranging the funeral, giving instructions, delegating flowers. Madeline handled the paperwork like she was filing a case. I remember sitting at the dining table, her saying, "Mom, maybe it's time to think about downsizing. That old house must feel huge now." Downsizing. That word still makes my skin crawl. It sounds practical, but what it really means is erasing. The first Christmas without David. Lucas sent a wreath from Amazon arrives pre-lit. Battery included. No card. I hung it anyway. When I texted him a photo, he replied, "Looks great. Mom, we'll come by next week." They didn't. Years folded into each other. Messages got shorter. Invitations fewer. Years folded into each other. "Mom," Madeline would say, "you know how the holidays are." I'd smile into the phone, say I understood. And maybe I did. The world was spinning faster, and I had chosen a slower orbit. Still, I made my own kind of noise. I taught piano again. this time to neighborhood kids who didn't know Bach from the Beatles but loved the sound of a real instrument. I made soup for Rachel, my neighbor, every Sunday. I still set the table for two out of habit. David's seat across from mine. A glass of red poured that no one drank. Then one evening last year, Lucas called out of nowhere. His voice had that careful brightness that meant something was coming. "Mom, listen, there's this new community in Cambridge, really nice. Assisted living, but it's more like a resort." I remember the spoon freezing in my hand. A resort. Yeah, with a pool and yoga classes. You'd love it. I can set up a tour. It's safe. Mom, you won't have to worry about driving or maintenance or thinking for myself. I interrupted. He laughed nervously. Don't be like that. But I could hear it in his tone. He'd already decided for me. That night, after I hung up, I sat by the piano and opened the fallboard. Dust shimmered in the lamplight. Between the keys lay a folded piece of paper yellowed with time. David's handwriting. Don't let anyone rearrange your life. Evelyn. Not even out of love. I cried then, not the wild kind, but the quiet one that leaves your throat aching. It was as if he had known this exact moment would come. I began to look at my house differently after that. Each photograph, each painting, every book on the shelf, they weren't clutter, they were proof of a life lived deliberately. That was when Father Thomas called. "We're hosting a 3-day retreat for the parish women," he said. A small break before Thanksgiving. Silence. Reflection. A chance to breathe. 3 days of silence sounded divine. I packed light, a wool coat, David's watch, and his letter folded into my journal. The retreat was calm mountain air. Morning bells. No phones. I didn't tell Lucas I was going. Maybe part of me wanted to see if he'd notice. He didn't. When I returned, I expected to find a message, maybe flowers, at least a welcome home. Instead, the driveway was empty, except for a car I didn't recognize, a dark sedan with a Yale bumper sticker. Inside, everything looked almost the same except for the suitcase by the fireplace, and the faint smell of cologne that wasn't mine. That was the moment everything began to shift. I didn't know it then, but that cologne would lead me straight into the most peculiar alliance of my life. The man with the Yale bumper sticker arrived just before dusk that day. I remember the way the light hit his glasses, amber catching in the lenses like a spark. "You must be Evelyn," he said, voice low, almost professorial. "I'm Leonard Merrick. Leo, almost professorial. If you prefer." He said it as if that explained everything. Apparently, the facility where he lived had been temporarily closed for maintenance. Lucas and Madeline had offered my house as a safe, quiet place for him to stay while they were away in the Bahamas. No one had asked me. I stood there, fingers tightening on the doorknob, forcing a smile. "Of course," I said. "Make yourself comfortable." Inside, he looked around like a man cataloging a library. His eyes rested on my piano, then drifted to the books lining the walls. "Mahogany?" he asked, tapping the wood. "Cherry," I replied. He nodded, approving. "You play beautifully, I assume." I used to. That evening, we shared dinner mostly in silence. He ate with delicate precision, as if each bite were an argument he'd already won. I learned he was a retired philosophy professor from Yale. He'd been accused years ago of ethical misconduct, though he never said what kind. When I asked, he only smiled faintly and said, "People like to punish those who refuse to follow scripts." I didn't press. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint creaks, the hum of the refrigerator, the clock ticking louder than usual, The house that had once been my sanctuary now felt invaded. Yet beneath the irritation was a strange curiosity. Who was this man that my own family trusted more than me? The next morning, Leo was already up, brewing coffee as if he lived there. He'd found David's old mug and used it without asking. "Good taste never dies," he said, seeing my expression. "You seem very at home," I replied. He grinned. "Well, that's what family does, isn't it? Moves in without warning." I almost laughed. The irony stung. Over the next few days, we developed an unspoken rhythm. He read in the study. I taught a few piano lessons in the afternoons. Sometimes, he'd hover near the doorway, pretending to read while listening to me play. One afternoon, he asked softly, "What piece is that?" "Bach. Prelude in C major." He closed his book. Bach. Almost like thought made sound. "Bach reminds me of truth structured but infinite." I nodded, surprised by how easily he turned sound into philosophy. "You talk like my husband used to," I said before I could stop myself. He looked up. Lucky man. For the first time in years, the silence between songs didn't feel lonely. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. One evening, while dusting the shelves, I found him standing by my piano, holding a folded sheet of paper. My heart froze. It was David's letter. "Where did you find that?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Inside the piano bench. I thought it was music. Give it to me." He did. Immediately. No protest. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "He must have loved you deeply." I didn't respond. I slipped the letter back into its envelope and tucked it into my cardigan pocket like a secret heartbeat. That night, I played again. Alone this time. My fingers trembled on the keys. But the notes felt stronger than I expected. Maybe because I wasn't just playing for myself anymore. Days blurred into a strange kind of peace. We shared meals, debated art and morality, occasionally exchanged dry jokes about the absurdity of getting old. "Do you ever feel like people stop talking to you and start talking around you?" I asked him once. He laughed softly. "Every day." It was in that shared exile that we became allies. Then came the first message from Lucas. "Hey, Mom. Hope everything's okay with Mr. Merrick. We'll be back Monday. Don't worry about the turkey. Maybe order something from Whole Foods." Something inside me snapped. Whole Foods. As if 30 years of home-cooked Thanksgivings could be replaced by pre-packaged gravy. I stared at the text for a long time before replying simply, "Everything's under control." When Leo saw the message, he raised an eyebrow. Cryptic. "I like it." The next day, he sent his own message to Madeline. The fire department was kind. I almost spilled my coffee. "What are you doing?" He smiled, returning the favor. They assumed we needed supervision. Let's see how they handle uncertainty. We called it psychological chess. A little cruel. Maybe, but after years of being managed, it felt liberating. Over the next few days, we exchanged short, puzzling messages with them. The neighbors are curious. The lights came back on. Everything smells like cinnamon and smoke. No context. No reassurance. Just enough to make them wonder. Rachel from the cafe told me she saw Madeline's Instagram story. "Anyone near Concord who can check on my mom?" She's not answering. I smiled into my tea. But it wasn't just mischief. There was something healing about it. Leo and I weren't just getting even, we were reclaiming the narrative. Every word we sent was a declaration. We are not forgotten. One night, during a storm, the power flickered out. I lit candles. The piano standing in shadows like a memory waiting to be played. Leo sat across from me. Reading by candlelight. You know, he said, they think they're protecting us from chaos, but they're the ones afraid of silence. I looked at him. You sound like David. He smiled gently. Maybe I sound like you. For a long time, we sat there. The rain tapping against the window. The room flickering gold. I played Bach again. Slower this time. He closed his eyes, mouthing the notes. Somewhere between those measures, something shifted. Not romance. Exactly. Something deeper, a recognition. Two people written out of their own stories, quietly taking the pen back. I didn't know it then. But that night would become the turning point. Because while I was learning to live again, my family was learning how it felt to lose control. And by the time they returned from their perfect vacation, I wasn't the same woman they'd left behind. When they finally returned from the Bahamas, the driveway filled with the sound of tires crunching gravel and a high-pitched laugh that didn't belong here. I was in the kitchen, slicing apples for a tart. The air smelled of cinnamon and defiance. Madeline's heels clicked first. Lucas followed, balancing luggage. His voice cheerful but cautious. Mom, you home. I wiped my hands on a towel, stepped into the hallway, and smiled. Of course, where else would I be? For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Madeline's eyes darted toward Leo, who stood behind me, calmly sipping coffee from David's mug. Dr. Merrick, she said, tone rising. You're still here. Leo's face didn't move. Apparently, no one told me when the eviction date was. Lucas frowned. Mom, we thought you... Thought I'd what? I asked. Disappear. The silence after that was sharp enough to cut the air. They sat at the dining table that night, not touching the meal I'd made. Lucas tried diplomacy first. Hands folded. Voice soft. Mom, you know this wasn't intentional. We didn't want you alone for the holiday. Then you shouldn't have left me alone, I said. Madeline jumped in, polished and pragmatic. It was last minute. A trip we couldn't cancel. We thought having Leo here would what? I interrupted. Keep me occupied. Like a dog sitter. She blinked, thrown off by the calm in my voice. Leo leaned back in his chair, watching like a silent juror. To be fair, he said mildly, she's very low maintenance. I almost laughed. Almost. Lucas exhaled, rubbing his temples. Okay. Clearly. There's been a misunderstanding. No, I said, my tone steady. There's just been a shift, and you're not used to it yet. He looked at me then not as a son looks at his mother, but as a man trying to read someone he's underestimated. The next morning, I found Madeline whispering into her phone in the garden. I caught fragments. Confused, impulsive, needs supervision. She didn't see me standing behind the curtain. I took a photo, her hand gesturing. Her face set in control and saved it in a folder labeled evidence. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but the instinct felt right. Later that afternoon, Lucas asked to talk privately. We sat in the living room, the one room I'd refused to redecorate since David died. His voice was measured, managerial. Mom, I think what's happening is you're lonely. You've always been independent, but that can turn into isolation. Madeline and I just want what's best for you. What's best for me? I said. Or what's easiest for you? He hesitated, then forced a smile. Both. Ideally. I wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, you sound like a man justifying a takeover. Leo entered the room then, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed one to me. then looked at Lucas. She's doing fine. You know, better than most people I know half her age. Lucas's jaw tightened. With respect? Aiders. You've only been here a week. True, Leo said, setting his cup down. But sometimes a week is all it takes to see what's been invisible for years. The words hit the room like a slow explosion. That evening, Leo and I drafted the first version of our experiment. A test. He called it a mirror for their behavior. They've scripted your life. A test. It's time to flip the lines. We decided to continue the game of messages. Subtle, harmless, but laced with unease. Lucas received. The basement door is fixed. Adeline got. Everything smells like ash and oranges. The next day, Rachel at the cafe told me she saw Lucas pacing outside the house during lunch break. Phone pressed to his ear. Muttering, "She's losing it." Muttering. That night, I watched him from the window, standing by his car with his phone lit against his face. He looked older suddenly, small against the dark. I should have felt pity. I didn't. Instead, I played. Not Bach this time, something new. My own notes, improvised and sharp. A melody David would have called defiant grace. Through the glass, I could see Lucas glance toward the sound, then walk away. The next morning, I woke to find an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a brochure for Concord Assisted Living and a note in Lucas's handwriting. Just information, not pressure. Love you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it neatly, slid it into the piano bench beside David's letter, and whispered, "Not yet." What I didn't realize was that Madeline had already made her next move. Madeline's move came wrapped in civility, a lunch invitation. "Let's reset," she'd said over the phone, her tone sugary, professional. Just the three of us. No tension. I agreed. Because polite wars always need a battlefield. The restaurant was all glass and white linen. The kind of place that mistook sterility for class. Lucas arrived first, shaking my hand instead of hugging me. Madeline followed, coat perfectly pressed, smile too bright. They started soft weather, traffic, Ella's latest school project. Then came the pitch. "Mom," Lucas began, eyes cautious. "I want to propose something practical. You love that house, but it's a lot to manage. I want to propose something practical. You could move closer to us. Less work, more company." Madeline chimed in smoothly. "We could handle everything tenants, maintenance, even your finances. It's what families do." I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the spoon clink against the cup. "And what exactly would I do?" Madeline smiled. "Relax." I set the spoon down. "I see. You'd prefer I be decorative." "Lucas," Hild. "You're reading this wrong. You'd prefer I be decorative. We just—" "Yes. I know. You've said that before." I looked up, holding his gaze. "But tell me, Lucas, when was the last time you asked what I wanted?" He didn't answer. Madeline reached for her water, hiding behind the motion. When the check came, I insisted on paying. "You're my guests," I said, in every sense of the word. That night, back home, I sat at the piano bench staring at the glossy wood. David's letter, the brochure, all the polite betrayals stacked inside like an archive of patience. I pulled out my phone and opened Ella's vlog channel. She hadn't posted in weeks. Her last upload was a short clip of our old Thanksgiving dinner, the camera panning across a younger me and David laughing over cranberry sauce. The title read, "When Family Felt Easy, I hadn't realized she remembered that version of us. The next day, I invited Leo for coffee in the garden. The air smelled of wet leaves and smoke from someone's fireplace. They want control, I said. I want clarity. He nodded, leaning back. Then let's give them both. Just not the kind they expect. His plan was bold, too clever by half. We'll build a record, he said. Every text, every call. Let them reveal themselves. The truth doesn't need to be shouted, it just needs to be shown. We started documenting everything. Screenshots, voice memos, even ambient recordings of their visits. Leo called it an ethical mirror. I called it insurance. A week later, Madeline stopped by unannounced, holding a pie like a peace offering. For you and Leo, she said, but her eyes scanned the house as though checking inventory. I'm surprised you didn't call first, I said. I wanted it to feel spontaneous. Leo appeared then, charming as ever. Ah, the lawyer with a pie. Dangerous combination. She laughed, thinly. You two seem to get along well. Mutual respect, he said. It's rare these days. When she left, she forgot or pretended to forget her phone on the counter. I picked it up. The lock screen showed a text preview from an unknown number. We can finalize the guardianship after the evaluation. Guardianship. My stomach turned cold. I placed the phone face down and smiled when she returned. You left this. Thank you, she said, her cheeks tight. That night, I told Leo. He nodded slowly. So that's their endgame. Legal control. Power of attorney. Maybe even placement. And you think they'll go through with it? He gave a small, humorless laugh. Oh, they already have. They just haven't told you yet. I didn't sleep that night. They just haven't told you yet. The music filled the house like armor. The next morning, I sat at the piano and played David's favorite nocturne until my fingers cramped. Rachel knocked on my door, she said, breathless. Your daughter-in-law was in here an hour ago, asking if I'd noticed anything odd about you lately. I smiled, though it felt like glass cracking. What did you say? I said the only odd thing about you is that you're too polite. That was the moment I decided the politeness would end. Leo and I drafted the message together that evening, the one that would set everything in motion. The piano's been tuned. Everything's perfectly in place. It meant nothing. It meant everything. By midnight, both Lucas and Madeline had texted back versions of the same sentence. Mom, are you okay? For the first time. I didn't reply. I just played. The music drifted through the house and out into the night, climbing past the windows like smoke. I didn't know what the next day would bring, but I knew this much. They wanted control. I was about to give them clarity on my terms. The confrontation came 3 days later. On the first snow of December, I woke to the sound of tires grinding against the driveway and doors slamming shut. By the time I reached the front window, Lucas, Madeline, and Ella were already outside, bundled in their polished winter coats, faces drawn tight. They hadn't called first. They didn't need to. I'd known they'd come. Leo stood beside me, calm as always. You ready? He asked. I nodded. I've been ready for years. The front door creaked open under Lucas's hand. Mom, I've been ready for years. Good morning to you too, I said, stepping back to let them in. Madeline didn't remove her gloves. We're worried about you, she began. You've been acting strangely, not answering calls, sending bizarre messages. Bizarre, I interrupted, smiling faintly. That's an interesting word coming from someone who left a stranger in my home without asking. She stiffened. You're exaggerating. Leo walked forward. His voice mild. Madeline, would you call that exaggeration? Because where I come from, that's trespassing with good manners. Stay out of this. Lucas snapped. Leo shrugged. You invited me in. Remember, metaphorically, at least. Madeline turned to Lucas. See, this is what I meant. She's letting him manipulate her. I folded my hands over the piano lid. No, Madeline, I'm just done letting you all manipulate me. Lucas took a breath. The kind of breath you take before walking into a boardroom. Mom, please. You're confused. We just want to help. I gestured toward the living room. Then sit. Let me show you how much help I need. The air in the house changed thick. Electric. Expectant. Leo moved quietly to the side table and clicked the small remote we'd set up the night before. The television blinked to life. At first, it was nothing but static. Then came the images. The interior of my own kitchen, filmed from Ella's vlog camera. The frame shifted, and there was Madeline, laughing softly, saying, if they get along, even better. Two old people taking care of each other saves us the trouble. The room went dead silent. Ella gasped. Mom. Madeline stood abruptly. That's out of context. Leo's voice was steady. Context is what follows. The video cut to another clip, an audio file this time. Madeline's voice again. Sharp. Clipped. Guardianship will make it easier. She won't resist once it's official. Lucas's face drained of color. Madeline, what is this? She reached for his arm. I can explain. But I wasn't done. There's one more thing, I said quietly. The next file opened with the sound of paper unfolding. Then, David's voice, steady and familiar, came through the speakers recorded years ago when he was already ill. Don't let anyone rearrange your life. Steady and familiar. Evelyn. The line echoed, lingered, filled every corner of the room. Lucas sat down slowly, hands covering his mouth. Madeline stood frozen, eyes wide but unblinking, calculating exits that no longer existed. Leo turned to her. You had me institutionalized. Remember. Because I knew about your ethics violation, the falsified deposition. You thought no one would believe me. Now they don't have to. You confessed. On camera. In your own words. Madeline's voice cracked. You can't use this privacy laws. In your own words. Actually, the footage belongs to Ella. Public domain. By the magic of teenage curiosity. Ella looked between us. Her eyes wet. I didn't mean for this to happen. Grandma. I walked over, resting a hand on her shoulder. I know. Darling. Sometimes truth just finds the light on its own. Lucas stood then, anger finally melting into something rawer shame. Mom. I had no idea. She said it was temporary. She said you'd agreed. I shook my head. You stopped asking a long time ago. Lucas. You assumed. The fire crackled behind us. The only sound left. Madeline finally spoke. In a voice small. What do you want from me? I looked at her, calm and unflinching. Nothing. I just wanted you to see yourself clearly. It's a gift few people get. Leo leaned against the piano, watching with quiet satisfaction. Madeline turned to Lucas. Desperate now. Say something. He didn't. He only said, We're leaving. As they walked to the door, I added softly, Lucas, before you go, the key you gave Dr. Merrick. I've had it melted down. I'm tired of people coming and going as they please. He nodded once, almost respectfully, and stepped into the snow. When the door closed, the silence was heavier than any argument. When the door closed, Leo exhaled. I went to the piano and lifted the lid. They wanted proof of competence. I think they just got it. He smiled. What now? I ran my fingers over the keys. Now, I play. And I did David's melody at first. Then my own. A new piece, uncertain but alive. And I did David's melody at first. The snow fell in perfect silence. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a prison. It felt like mine again. When the final note faded, Leo said softly, "You know, Evelyn, you might have just composed the soundtrack to your revenge." I smiled faintly, closing the lid. No, Leo, that was the sound of my freedom. He nodded. Freedom sounds like Bach. Sometimes, I said, looking at the snow. Sometimes it sounds like silence finally belonging to me. The morning after, the house was still. Snow had settled thick across the porch steps, the kind that muffles every sound. I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the world turn white. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. Leo appeared in the doorway, his scarf crooked, a folder under his arm. "You didn't sleep," he said. "I didn't need to." I replied, "Its strange peace feels heavier than anger." He set the folder on the table. I replied, "Its strange peace feels heavier than anger." Halden Associates. I thought maybe you think I'm rewriting my will. He smirked. I think you're rewriting your story. We spent the morning sorting through documents, bank forms, letters, the brittle edges of a life too long delegated to other people. Somewhere between the papers, I found the old deed to the house, signed in my name and David's. My hand lingered on his signature. "I'm keeping this place," I said, "but not for them." "For me?" Leo nodded, almost solemnly. "Good. It deserves someone who listens when it breathes." Outside, a car passed the same gray SUV. Lucas. He didn't stop, just slowed, then drove on. By noon, Rachel came by with her usual latte and a conspiratorial grin. "Your story's out. You know," she said, setting her phone down. On the screen, a video Ella's vlog had gone viral. The title read, "When Grandma Outsmarted Everyone." I stared at the thumbnail. Me at the piano. Back straight. Face calm. Light from the window outlining the silver in my hair. Rachel laughed softly. "Half the town's calling you an icon. The other half's afraid of you." I sipped my coffee. Both reactions are acceptable. Later. Leo joined me at the piano. The late afternoon light hit the keys, turning them gold. "You realize," he said, "turning them gold. Madeline won't let this go quietly." I replied, "Noise is easier to trace than silence." He smiled, slow and knowing. "So what's your next move?" Evelyn Pierce. I played a low, deliberate note C minor. "They wanted guardianship," I said. "Now I'll be the one holding the pen." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and relentless. In the reflection of the window, I could see Leo watching me, half amused. In the reflection of the window, half impressed. "You really are your husband's widow." I didn't look up. "No," I said. "I didn't look up. I'm his echo. And I've only just started to speak. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit that subscribe button. And I've only just started to speak, because sometimes They thought age made me easy to control. They thought silence meant surrender. But silence can be strategy. And dignity, once you reclaim it, can be louder than any argument. This story isn't over. Families have long memories, and so do I. So stay tuned. Because the next chapter might just prove revenge isn't cruel. It's clarifying,